everyone. This is Katrina McHyde with another vlog post of On the Narrow Path. This one is kind of special because I'm going to try something new. YouTube just came out with a way to share videos called premieres, where I can actually give a message and I can put it up at a certain time, and I can actually already have it done and be in a chat program with you to be able to chat back and forth about it. So I'm going to try that, and I'm going to use this as a test to see how everyone likes it and who shows up. And maybe I'll do quite a few of them just to see if it catches on and you enjoy having me there to chat with whatever I'm saying. So we're going to try that. This is, of course, Tim McHyde's channel, and you'll see here that I use this channel as well. We're a team, you know, I'm married to the man, so we're a team. That's why I use this channel. And I don't know if he'll show up or not. This time, he probably won't, because I am going to have to show up at midnight my time here in Germany. I'm going to go to work. As you know, I work at night. And so when I get back from work, then I will wait till midnight and be there while this is showing. So we'll see how this works and how you like it. For all of you that come regularly and support watching the videos and leaving comments, I really genuinely appreciate you. I mean, the interaction really helps me to see what helps, what doesn't help. And I appreciate the feedback because it helps have a dialogue in a way that helps me to learn as well. And I just love learning from you, and I hope that the interaction is uplifting to all of you as well. So I am going to sort of follow up kind of with some things that I've been talking about the past few days in my earlier vlog posts here that I've done a little more recently. Yesterday I talked about giants on our shelves and how to get those things that we have been not sure what to do with off the shelf. Those things, those spiritual problems that we have that we haven't been able to overcome and we've gotten frustrated on and we put on a shelf and we don't know what to do with it, and then it sort of gets piled underneath life, underneath things, and we don't get back to it. So I kind of gave some tips on how to get forward motion in those things and pick them back up and find them out of the pile of the things that you have to do in a day and make them really important, because we really need to get back on track of putting spiritual things first. Where your heart is, your treasure is, and where your time is shows where your heart is and your treasure is. So that's one of the things that I worked with, is gave some tips yesterday on that actually, and today I'm going to do the same thing. This is another tip on something you can do with those things that maybe you're not getting much flow in, or right now you're in a lull where things are not quite moving and you're doing everything you can. You're praying about it, you're working at it, you've done everything, and you might feel even a little tired about what you're going through right now, and it's just not budging. So this is another tip on something that can be helpful to get unstuck. And it's gonna sound kind of crazy, but it works. And I'm gonna use my own example of what's happening in my life right now to show you the possibility of what you can do for yourself. So here is what's going on. I'm going to give you kind of an update of how we're doing, what's going on in our lives right now, and then I'll tie it into scripture and to what might you be able to do to be able to add it into your own life. So this is testimony time of what's happening. Now, testimony is a big word. I've talked about this before, but testimony really means you're testifying, like in a court or anywhere, witnessing what happened and the details of what happened. In the case when we're talking about in spiritual matters, though, it's not only what happened for us in the past or for others in the past that we've seen, it's also testifying what's happening now. And it's also testifying of what will happen in the future that we're sure of. That's faith. We make faithful testaments. By faith we walk. By faith we proclaim what will happen because of what we know about God. And so I'm going to bring that concept in with David back to what I was talking about yesterday, actually, blog post number 64. So if you want to go back and look at that, you're welcome to. But we're going to go back and get back into 1 Samuel 17 today with that idea of testimony and how David did, past, what's happening now, and what he knew would happen in the future with all that. So this is what's happening for us now. Everybody that's been keeping up with us knows that we've been working with immigration issues here in Germany, as well as health insurance, because our son Zachary was dropped from health insurance. And so we're at this very unique point where we have now received, some of us have received immigration status. Okay, we've got a renewal of immigration status. So my husband, myself and Caleb has figured out how to get our immigration set. Zachary is still not set. His immigration ends in 2 days. And so they now that we know, they're not going to kick him out. They can't kick him out. He can be here, but he will not be legally immigrated here. He will be here. They can't take him out because he's special needs and we are his legal guardians. But all services shut down for him. And so that's, the way it is. And if that's what Father wants, that's what Father wants. We're good with that. So what that means, though, on top of that, is that he no longer gets to go to the center that he loves to go to. And this center is a regional center that's created here in Germany. They have regional centers for special needs people to be able to go through during the day. They have on those centers a place for younger people to be able to go to school, grade school through high school. They have an area for those that are capable of working to be able to have gainful employment. They get to work on different small projects that companies will come in and hire them to do as a group. Like, for instance, if someone has a bunch of nuts and bolts and they need them separated and put in 2 different containers and different sections, and they have a bunch of different sizes, then they'll hire them to do that sort of work. There's other things that they'll hire them to do as well. And they will make money and have health insurance and be able to, be productive and be a part of the team of humans on earth at work and get something from that. Then there's another part that is for those that cannot work. And what they have are activities, small groups, about 7 to 8 people in each room, that have activities throughout the day. They eat together, they clean up together, they take a rest time together, they play puzzles, they have different crafts. They'll go on different excursions around. Maybe they'll go to the theater, or they'll go to a cafe together. So they have all kinds of neat things, and Zachary has had the couple years that he has been a part of this program. He has had the best time of his life. I mean, he's been the happiest of his 24 years that he's ever been during this time, and we're so grateful and thankful for that time. It's been wonderful for him. It's just been exciting to see him have something so beautiful. And so in a couple days, that might end because of the whole immigration situation, because the health insurance that we had for him dropped him after he got sick in February, and they felt that they didn't need to pay for the hospital bill. So they left us with tens of thousands of dollars to pay on that, and canceled our insurance and to Zachary. And so we've been trying to figure out how to get insurance ever since, because legally you have to have insurance here in order to get immigration. So it's all connected, and we have taken it really well. We know Father's shown up in amazing situations. We're not trying to stay here in Germany. We're not trying to leave Germany. We're trying to be in the will of Father. So we've done our part to stay, if that's what we're supposed to do. And other people have pitched in with their whole hearts to help us. And we're just so thankful for those that have felt that they have been called to try to help us out in a foreign country where we don't speak the language really well. So it's been interesting, and we've relaxed about it. It's been frustrating for others because things, I mean, it's this whole process started in February, and it's now near the end of October. And so it's been, it's been a few months. It's been coming along a few months. But we're all fine. Zachary's alive. He got well, and he is as strong as he was before, probably even slightly stronger than he was when he was before he was admitted into the hospital. So that's great, and we look forward. And here is the testimony. That's of Father's goodness and what he has provided for Zachary, for instance, and for this family. And the testimony now is that whatever happens, whether he's able to go to the center or not, we know that if he keeps going to the center, that Father has provided it by miracles, because we're still working on health insurance. We're hoping to hear something within maybe today or tomorrow, but who knows, because we've talked to many health insurances and gotten denied. And we'll see what happens with that. But we have to get that in order to run into immigration really fast and say, we got it. And they'll say, okay, here's a temporary note saying he's got residency, and then he can keep going to the center. Who knows? We have two days to find out. It'll be fun. And if he doesn't get that, then Zachary will stay here. He will be home with us. And thankfully, I'm the only one that has a job that I have to go out of the house from. And Tim is here helping produce workbooks, watching Zachary, helping to make newsletters and free articles for all of you who follow him with Bible prophecy and how to prepare for end times events, which we are in. So preparing our hearts and our minds and what we're doing now for that are some of the goals that we have together. So that's why I do these vlog posts. So we're able to watch Zachary doing that as well. So he may be coming home, and Father has something even better in store for us. I don't know what that could be, but hey, whenever Father takes something away or allows something to be taken away, or even if the enemy tries to take it away and succeeds, Father, what has been, the enemy has tried to curse us with, Father means for a blessing. So it's going to be exciting to see the transitions of what happens if everything gets just resolved in miraculous ways, and we will testify of the past, in the past when it finally happens, of how Father comes in last second and saves the day. Or how he let it die and brought in something new and birthed something even more beautiful in our lives. We'll find out. So, and we know that, Zachary is going to be healed completely. And I believe that he's in the path of being healed. I think he's in, from my perception, and this is my testimony, so I could say whatever I want. Tip, tip. You can say whatever you want in your testimony. You decide if you're going to make a faithful testimony that God is so good and Jehovah is so good, or that life is so terrible and it's overtaking me and the enemy is... But you know what? If you're going to say life is so terrible and the enemy is overtaking me, go ahead and do that, but always follow it up with, and Father's going to come in and save me. And it's going to be just fine, and it's going to be one of those wow stories that I'll have to tell my grandkids. So you can make it whatever you want, but in the end, make it that God is showing up, and he's showing up really good. And that's living by faith. In the past, I was not so much like this. In the past, I was more of a complainer. Like, oh, my house is falling apart and I can't fix it because I can't find anyone to help me and I don't have the money to do it. And, I need to have different vitamins in order to work on my health issues, and we can't afford them, and we're in a foreign country and you can't get them anyway. And, and it was all about these things that supposedly I was stuck in, or, we'll never get to a place where we'll be able to get something done and rest for a while, whatever. So all of those things, I was a Debbie Downer. We call it in the American vernacular of things sometimes. And so Father has really worked on my complaining and helped me to turn it around and show my complaints and say, but you're going to show up and make it something awesome, which is what he does. If you read your scriptures long enough, all the stories show over and over again of what Father has done, that he always shows up for his children. And you are his child if you want to be his child with your own free will. If you've chosen for him to be your father, for Jehovah to be your father, and the Messiah to be your older brother, and accept his blood, then you're adopted. And even if you're being picked on hard, it's probably a good sign, because that means that you probably are. It means you are adopted, because the enemy only picks on those that he hates, and he hates all those that follow Jehovah. So even the Messiah was picked on really heavily by Satan, if you hadn't noticed. So it's gonna happen, and all of the apostles were picked on as well, and the prophets, the apostles in the New Testament, prophets, and the people in all generations that are Father's children have troubles on this earth. We were promised suffering, so it's going to happen, but Father means for all of that to turn around for your good. And even now, in the suffering, we can go through it with more hope and with more peace of going through that suffering, when we know we're not alone. He'll never leave us or forsake us. And when we know that whatever we're going through, he's going to turn in for good. He promises to turn it in for good. For we know that all things work together for good to those who love him and keep his commandments. And what are his commandments? I'm always saying it. Love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, for the love of God. According to 1 John chapter 3 and 4, the way that we show God that we love him is by loving our neighbor as ourselves. So the next part of my testimony has to do a follow-up, not only with our immigration and with what's going on with Zachary, but we're just going along here, and there was this situation that these situations come up that you don't know what to do with. So we had this nice fellowship yesterday, and we were talking. Someone had someone in there. They rent out part of their house as an Airbnb, and they had someone that came, a group of people come in, that there only 4 people were allowed, and a group came in that was more than 4, and they looked kind of shady, and it was kind of scary, and they're kind of doing scary things. and so we worked with that and figured out that we could pray about it, number one. And when you feel kind of uncomfortable around certain situations, to not throw that off. Don't shove that, because many times those scary feelings are a little knock by Father to pay attention, to stay close to him, so he can give you directions on how to work through dangerous areas. And as you know, for believers, for those who are walking the narrow path or trying to walk the narrow path, it's getting harder and harder. And the world is getting darker and darker. That was prophesied to happen, and we're going to have to learn how to pay attention. So when these things happen, we go, okay, Father is with us. If something bad happens, he's still going to work with us and help us. And if we pay attention to those things, he'll guide us through this, so that we can walk through the valleys of the shadows of death and fear none evil, because he is with us, and his rod and staff, which will guide you through it. That means he will give you directions. He will be a lamp unto your feet, and a light unto your path. And so you can trust him to work through that. So we had a situation as a group to be able to practice those ideas and work on faith, work on going slow, work on praying, and not walk in fear within the situation, but to be able to walk in faith, but also pay attention, because sometimes things are dangerous, and you do pay attention to things and ask Father how to handle them in a wise way, because many situations that we come into, we don't really know how to do in wisdom. It's above us. And so we need him to show up and give us his wisdom. And he promises to give wisdom to all those who asks, without ridiculing them or putting them down, according to James. James 5, I think, 4 or 5. So, you can use those tools to say, okay, Father's good, we're going to get through this, and he will show us the wisdom. And it came up, well, how do you deal with this, considering the idea of loving God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and loving your neighbors yourself? How would you apply that? That's a good question, right? It's like, when you feel like defending yourself or, taking care of yourself, how is that love? Or how do I do that and not hurt them? And of course, healthy boundaries are also an interesting situation. So when you consider those things, the way that I shared how to handle it, number one, it's always good to keep everyone safe. So sometimes you do ask for help. You might be guided to ask for help. I had a suggestion which may or may not be something that would be needed, but just ask the police to come by and check on things and kind of check out the license plates to make sure everything is okay in the situation. It's just so that they know everyone is being watched and just to make sure everyone is safe. If there's a problem, then there's a problem, and this keeps it from becoming a problem out there in the future for somebody else. Or if there's no problem, then no harm. Everyone is good and looked after. But sometimes you're just called to just sit tight and be careful and be quiet and stay in prayer and be alert. So what is the answer? You never know. That's what's so hard about this walk. This walk that Father is asking us to do is hard because love, it kind of fluctuates on what you should do. For instance, for the showbread that King David took when he was running from Saul, he had a group of soldiers with him, and they needed to eat. There was no other food at all except for the showbread that was specifically only for the priesthood back then, and no one else was allowed to eat it. Well, David asked for the showbread if it would be okay, and the priest said, well, the only way it could be okay is if no one has touched a woman for 3 days. They said, well, we never, if we're going out to war, we don't even go there. So everyone is fine that way. And so they said, okay, good enough, because it was actually breaking the law to eat that showbread by anyone but the priests. And Father, Yehovah, didn't do anything about it. You know why? Because love says someone eating and getting sustained is more important. That is love above a specific law of technicality of something. It's about life and death. You see? So it's not so easy to know what to do in situations, or if Father's gonna, sometimes we get scared. Father might get mad because you actually did that. But Father, he's great, because really the ultimate law, as the Messiah said in Matthew and some of the other Gospels, that the highest law, when he was asked by the legal people, the Pharisees and the scribes, Master, what is the greatest law in Scripture? What is the greatest law? And he said, love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. And the second is like to it, love your neighbor as yourself. So love is a little more fluid on what should be done. And that makes it hard on us because we like black and white. Just tell us what to do and what not to do really clearly, so that way we don't step on the wrong places and get ourselves in trouble. And Father's wanting us to become like him. And that means exercising, learning, discernment, and just making and practicing. You're going to make mistakes along the way. So don't be afraid of making mistakes. Be afraid of not doing anything, and be afraid of trying to be rebellious. A rebellious attitude, if you've got one, ask God to help you with it. Even if you have a rebellious attitude, if you're really struggling hard and you're just, not quite getting it, and you don't like the rebellious attitude, that's one thing. But if you are absolutely, really not wanting to go God's way and rejecting it, he'll let you go out of love, like the prodigal son. But he will be there like the father in the story of the prodigal son, just waiting for you to come back. He loves you so much, But you're going to go out there and probably have some experiences that you don't particularly like having, and you'll gain wisdom from that. But and we all do it. We all play the prodigal son to one degree or another. So those are some of the things happening in our life, and I hope that helps you to kind of see how you can do it. So that means that in the future we know for sure. This is the thing I wanted to tell you. This is the other thing I wanted to tell you. I had there was a few weeks ago. It's probably been about a month and a half now. A pastor and his wife came in from Nova Scotia, and he happens to have a gift of healing from Father. So I went down and had Zachary prayed for, and we've been, just looking to see what Father has going for Zachary. And I believe in healing. I believe in the gift of healing. I believe that things happen very quickly sometimes, and sometimes it takes a while. And I was just asked today, so how is he doing? Have you seen any changes? And I have seen some changes, and it's not what you would expect. So Zachary used to have like seizures like once every month during the moon time, believe it or not. And actually I've found through many care workers, nurses, as well as care workers, that's very common, that people with like seizure disorders or mental things around the moon time, things are a little more difficult, as well as for like women who are pregnant tend to have their children around the moon. So there's just some things going on with that, and I can't stop it. I'm sorry if that offends anyone, but I'm just reporting what's going on. It offends me too. It totally offends me, okay? I'm offended by it. I don't like anyone having to live with that sort of thing. Anyway, it went from once a month to now Zachary is having on the dot every weekend on Saturday or early morning Sunday, one seizure. He recovers really quickly, but one seizure every week instead of once a month, a set of seizures. So it has changed, and it looks worse. By all standards of everything, it looks worse. And actually, see, this is where testimony comes in really handy. What I have seen is if things change at all, you're on the right path. Because when things get worse, typically it's because something's flustered up that is not happy for what you're doing. And if you keep pushing through, and it may take a while, it might take a short time, or it might take years, but if you keep pushing through, you will get to the end result of the fullness of the healings and the deliverances that we have already through the Messiah and through his blood and what he did through his stripes. By his stripes we were healed and delivered, and by his death we were set free. So we know that there's life in that for us to hold on to. So my faith is that I know that's the truth. What I'm going through now, I can either say, well, it's not working for me, and give up and go do something else and get all upset and depressed that things are happening, or I can get excited and push into Father even further, knowing that the enemy hates it when we do that, and allow it to raise my faith, because faith is built by actually exercising it, right? So the way that we exercise it in things that look terrible. So if it looks really terrible, it's a great place to pick up your faith, and by faith testify that it's going to work for something awesome, which David was really good at doing. He would go, oh, this really stinks, and he'll go on and on and on and wax eloquent, in the Psalms of how terrible it is, but Father's going to turn it around. He's going to be there for me. He's going to make it great, and I'll be okay, and he's gonna protect me. So he goes into testifying of God's goodness towards him and towards everyone, even in the middle of the fight. And so that brings me how I'm going to tie these testimonies that I have. What I'm saying is that I genuinely believe this, and it's taken me a long time to believe it more and more. So practicing this, you get better at it. And sometimes, when you first start out trying to do what I'm talking about, you feel like parts of you feel like you're lying. Like you talk like this, you say, oh, you're just covering up stuff, or you're just being stupid, or you're just pretending. And so you get all these like messages in your head, like you're just being stupid, you're being artificial, you're like those accusatory things. And because part of you knows that you don't fully believe it, well, it's okay to not fully believe it. And it's okay to be practicing and not good at it. And it's okay if part of it's artificial. If your heart is wanting to pull into Father and practice things that are awkward, because it really is awkward to start going in this direction, all you do is just go ahead and do it and say, Father, I have this part that's nagging at me, and I don't know if it's my own thoughts. I don't know if it's my parents' thoughts. I don't know if it's my friends' thoughts who are telling me the same things, that I'm being stupid, or if it's demonic thoughts, where those thoughts are coming from. But I know this: faith works, so I'm going to keep pushing into this, and I reject whatever says is fake. And it's okay for me to be changed. It's okay for me to push into change. It's okay for me to practice and only halfway get into it and understand it, and go for it, so you can make your testimonies of what you're saying better and better. Say, okay, I'm believing that Zachary is 100% healed. I'm believing it. And at first, everything inside your head's going, that's a bunch of load of BS. That's just the truth. We all know that's what happens. You're being stupid and religious and everything else, and it's not true. And no one has ever seen or been able to verify very well, or hardly anyone, that an autistic person with seizure disorders totally gets healed, and spine goes straight and everything else. And even if you hear them on YouTube and other places, it doesn't mean it's true, because even if the doctors say so, I haven't seen it with my own eyes. And even if I did see it with my own eyes, well, that's one out of a bazillion. And so we don't know if that's God. I hear that all the time. Boy, Tim and I, we go through a lot of people and hear a lot of things. And we've heard that plenty of times. And so taking your testimony isn't trying to convince anyone else. It's deciding that you believe that Father, that Jehovah, the creator of everything, is so abundantly good, so perfectly good, that that's what's happening. And he loves it when you believe that. And if you keep working at it, you'll actually see more of his goodness. Doesn't mean you won't go through difficulties, just as the Messiah did, or all of the children in this book went through. It just means that all of it will work out for a purpose that is beautiful for all of us. And so we want purpose. And what is the main purpose here? Is it to be safe all the time physically? It might be for you. If you have survival issues, like, you're in survival mode, what I call survival mode, which basically means that you're a control freak. I'm just saying, I probably know a little bit about that and trying to overcome that. Just maybe. I'm getting better at it though. See, I'm practicing. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm much better than I used to be. Or if you've got other issues going on, all these things that, you're getting beat up by the enemy, or people are down on you, or you can't get through, or you might feel like you're poor, or maybe you are poor. You can't afford to pay for next month's rent, or whatever's going on. All those things can really wear on you, can really get you tired. But you're more tired if you think you're in it alone, and you're more tired if you think that it won't work for good, that somehow it will work for you in an eternal plan. Whatever physically, we're not going to have physical comforts all the time. We might have them for a while, and I'm so thankful because Father is such a great provider of things like food and clothing and other things. And at the same time, sometimes he thinks that one piece of clothing that has holes in it and eating in 3 days is enough for you. There's plenty of stories in scriptures. And I'm even saying this to myself. I've gone through times where things were harder, and I've never been through it as hard as the people I've seen in the worst parts of Nicaragua, though, and different parts of Costa Rica. But Nicaragua is one of the poorest. The areas that I was in Nicaragua was one of the poorest areas that there is in the world, even with Africa. And I had the pleasure of going there, and the people are lovely there, and there are many believers there, and they're joyful. They don't have a whole lot, and they do not have, some of them don't have a pot to go to the bathroom in. They're that poor. They go in ditches. I mean, they're that poor. So, and even at that, they find a way to praise God, and they actually are happier. They're happier people than I've seen in many parts of the world, especially first world countries. So it's not about what you have and don't have. It's about a mindset of faith of what you're looking for and what's valuable, of value to you. And comfort, I have to admit, I like to be physically comfortable. I mean, it's really hard during the cold times of winter, really hard for me because I tend to run a little more cold, and that makes it difficult. And I've had health issues that's made it difficult at times. But do I believe that Father will keep me warm in his own way, and that I'll make it through, and that I can do it with joy instead of complaining? Well, I believe I can, and I have another winter to practice in. And I'll get better at it with each winter that comes. It's that good. And Father will show up. And he's continuing to heal me. So with Zachary, with what's happening with him, same thing. I genuinely believe that things are shifting in his life and in our life, because the foundational stuff for his full healing, I'm not just interested, personally, I'm not just interested in just a physical healing or just a quick deliverance. Because if it's temporary and we're doing things, or there are things hidden that are there to set that to come back again, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something more permanent. So sometimes to do that, it's a path. There may be attitudes, there may be things that we're eating, there may be things that we're doing, or certain open doors that we don't know, because there's many things that are happening that are going on in the background that may bring, allow the autism or the seizures to come back, even if they were to go away. Now, I'm not interested in that. So we want a full healing. We want to be strong enough to be able to keep the healing, and praise Father in faithfulness with that. So with that, it could happen in right now. It could have happened as soon as hands were laid on him many times for healing, or it can happen little by little, or things can be happening because we don't walk by sight. That's the whole point. Not walk by sight, but walk by faith. And I believe that things are healing under the surface that we cannot see. And that is why we're seeing the increase in seizures. There's some odd things that you see here and there, that there's some movement going on. And everything that looks bad does not necessarily mean it's bad. So I believe, and I just don't believe that anything that's bad with Father is bad. I don't believe it. I mean, I used to, and I still have to exercise believing that sometimes when I'm really upset with something. I still have to. But overall, in a calm time, I don't believe it. And in a hard time, I believe it less, right? Because really, when things are honest, the hardest, and we're being pushed the hardest, and we're the most tired, we're the most hungry, we're the most angry, we're the most lonely, we're the most stressed, that's really where we find out how far we have grown. When things are comfortable and life is going great and we're a little more comfortable, that's not where we find where we've grown. So we're going to be tested at times, and life will test us at times. And so here is a test. I talked about this yesterday about David facing Goliath, and actually it's not just David facing Goliath, but all of Israel at that time was facing Goliath. And this is how I'm going to tie it within testimony within this talk with Scripture. And so if you want to pick up your Bibles, if you haven't already, we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. And you probably read the story a million times, or you know the story kind of, but we're going to go into some little details here that are really cool and interesting. So David, I'm going to pick up in verse 31 because this is kind of cool part of the story. And if you want to go back and look at other parts, that's good. Or my other posts that I've had that, that goes into some of this that I talked about last time, that's fine too. Verse 31 says, what David said, what he had said is that he had been asking people in the camp what's going on with the battle, and what King Saul had said. King Saul had said that anyone that's willing to fight Goliath will marry one of his daughters and be made rich, and his whole family would never have to pay taxes ever. It's a pretty good deal if you want to face a giant. And everyone hid. All of the warriors hid. So that's what we talked about yesterday. And so with this, him seeking information was overheard and reported to King Saul, is what it says in verse 31. So he had David brought to him. And David said to Saul, now notice how David is testifying here to King Saul, who is the commander of all armies, right? And David, he's just coming to see what's going on. He is tending the sheep of his father sometimes, and he's helping the king out at other times, but he's not necessarily a warrior. His 3 older brothers are the warriors. They're there on the field. But David says to King Saul, don't let anyone be discouraged by him. David is saying this to King Saul, who is a warrior. Don't let anyone be discouraged by him. And all of Israel was discouraged. They were hiding from the Philistines. They would go out in war formation, but they wouldn't do anything because they were afraid, especially of Goliath. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. So he, right there with surety, his testifying is that you don't have to be afraid. Don't let him bother you. In the middle of facing a whole army and with a giant. Now, how many of you would stand there and do that? I'm telling you that you have giants in your life right now that you can stand and testify of the same way. I'm not going to be afraid. You can even talk yourself into it. Not going to be afraid. Not going to turn away. Not going to flinch. God is going to help me. I'm going to get over it. Whatever those giants are. Whether it's addictions, whether it's health issues, whether it's problems with family members, whether it's a problem with yourself. I went through a few of them yesterday of all the different ways that you can have giants that you're facing. So how are you going to flinch? What are you going to do? You're going to let it defeat you? Are you going to hold steady or try to deny it's there, or, be distracted by a video game or TV because you don't really want to face it? Yeah. But Saul replied, this is how Saul replied, you can't go fight this Philistine. You're just a youth. And he's been a warrior since he was young. Like, get it together, kid. There's no way. I mean, we're warriors and we're afraid of him, and you're younger than we are, and you think that you can do something. So what was King Saul's testimony? Oh, you're too weak to do this. You know what you're talking about. We're the experts here, and we're telling you that we can't do it, so you can't do it. But David, he had courage, and he answers Saul back. This is a king, okay? David is talking to a king, and David isn't a king yet, okay? He said, your servant has been, listen to this testimony. This is what King David is testifying of his past, of what God has done for him. Your servant has been tending his father's sheep whenever a lion or a bear came and carried off a lamb from the flock. What? He's been dealing with lions and bears? Do you feel like you've been dealing with lions and bears in your life? Yeah, there's lions and bears in different forms, different things that you've gone through, that you've survived somehow. Sometimes you feel like by the grace of God, or instead of the grace of God being there, somehow you made it without it. Yeah, sound familiar? Which testimony is it? You did it on your own strength, or God somehow you used up all your strength, but God used the rest of whatever you didn't have to make it through, and it was a miracle. Your testimony, you get to make it what you want. Which one is more faithful, and which one's going to get you further? See? So he's not just assuming that he's doing the lion, that he overcame this lion and bear on his own, which we're going to see here in the story. Said, I went after it, struck it down, and rescued the lamb from its mouth. Like the lamb was in its mouth, and he pulled the lamb out, and then if it reared up against me when I did that, I would grab it by its fur, strike it down, and kill it. Now, how many of us would put our life in danger for a lamb? Why wouldn't we allow the lamb to be taken and run off with it and go, one loss, but at least I'm alive? Yeah, David was really amazing what he was willing to boldly do. And yeah, a man is not as strong usually as a bear or a lion, but he believed in God, and he wanted to fight for the property that belonged to his father. Jesse, because this was tending his father's flocks. It wasn't his flocks, it was his father's flocks. Okay, and he was the youngest brother of 8. Your servant has killed lions and bears, this uncircumcised Philistine, even though he's bigger than a lion and a bear, will be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. Testimony of what's going to happen, and he knows for sure it's going to happen before it happens. This is how bold he is and how much he has exercised his faith on different things in life that's already happened and what's happening now. And he is prophesying of what will happen in the future based on that. But what you decide about what you've gone through either gives you the faith and the strength of what you're going through now and what the future will show of God's goodness and you making it and it working for good, or of you being overcome by the giants and the lions and bears. You make up that story. It is your responsibility. See? So going on, then David said, Jehovah, who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. So who did he give the glory and the credit for? For all of it. Jehovah rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. See? So you have an opportunity here of professing God's goodness and saying what you believe and believing by faith that things will work out for you. And even if you do lose your life, if you've helped to save many others, that there's no greater thing than a brother lay down his life for his friend, right? So I'm not saying be stupid. I'm not saying to do anything outside of your faith. I'm saying work up your faith, exercise your faith, be willing to see things in a light of God's goodness to you and to those around you, more in that God has forsaken us and we're so terrible and we're such sinners and we're so bad that God can't show up for us, and we just don't have it together enough, and other people, they're sinning so much that they can't be in God's favor. God loves everyone. You can intercede for everyone. He wants us to intercede. He loves everyone. He just wants them to get together and quit hurting each other by not following what he says to do, because he wants peace and love and joy. And when we don't do what he says, we create the opposite of peace, love, and joy. Right? So he's just wanting us to get it together and to quit doing it. So Saul finally decided he didn't want to do the job. He didn't have anyone else that wanted to do the job and would fight him. And they couldn't stand there for another 40 days. This had happened for 40 days that the armies of God, of the Israelites, came out against the Philistines and went in army formation and did nothing. 40 days. And so nobody wanted to take him up on his offer. So we went, okay, well, I guess we have no hope. So we're going to put it in this youth's hand. We're going to go ahead and let him go forward. I'm not going to rise up in my faith and go fight this giant, even as the leader of Israel. And I'll let this youth go represent us. he didn't have much hope in it. Saul did not have much hope that there was going to be any win, and he believed fully to make such a decision that they were all dead men and they were all going to be put under Philistine rule. To do a thing like this where you're a warrior and you have a youth come up to you and give you this story and decide to go out and fight, and he's a lot smaller than you are. David was so small that he couldn't even use the armor of King Saul because King Saul was so big. It just didn't work. He had to take it off. So he didn't have a protection on. Jehovah was his protection. He didn't have an armor. Jehovah was his armor, and he went there in the spirit and did what everyone else was afraid to do. So this directly applies to us, my friends. Directly, we are facing giants every day. We're facing them, and we need to rise up because Father has given us the tools, and sometimes we don't know what they are and we don't know how to use them. But we learn while we're walking. We learn while we're running towards the enemies. We learn while we don't faint or grow weary in doing good and in believing that God is good, even when things go really, really south, really, really bad. And they do go really, really bad. Right now, things are not going perfect for us. They never have. And in the past, I was quite depressed about it. I've already talked about being in severe depression. But I know now that whatever you go through, however terrible it is, has opportunity to grow your faith so that you can become more loving and patient and kind and good and not puffed up and proud, not boastful in yourself, but boastful in God and his goodness, so that you can endure all things, hope all things, believe all things, and never, ever, ever fail. Those things are built, those things that last eternally, those aspects of love, those aspects of being God-like, Christ-like, they're built in the middle of hard situations. So the more hard situations you have to practice on, the more blessed you are. So that is my testimony, and I'm sticking to my story. And I'll be able to show you in future vlog posts that I was right, because God is always good. And as long as I know that God is always good and I testify of God's goodness, I'll be right. But more than that, doesn't matter if I'm right or not. I'm going to tell you a little secret, and I've said this before. I'm not worried about being right. I'm worried about being happy. And it makes me happy whether I die for it or not, or whether I live. It makes me happy to think that the Creator that created everything is so loving and compassionate and good and patient that he will make sense of all of this wickedness, that he will turn it all around on its head, that anything that touches me or the people that I love and all people, that he has a plan for it. Even if I don't understand now, there is a plan, and he has a good plan. It's the best plan. And there's nothing the enemy can do to me or anyone else that is not temporary. It's temporary. And in that temporariness is growing something that will last, the characteristics that will last forever inside me. And I will have the ability to have eternal life in peace, happiness, joy, and I can even have it now and be happier in the middle of suffering because I do it with a purpose. And that's how the Messiah did it. He was able to overcome. He was able to face what he knew he was going to. He knew he was going to be severely beaten. He knew he was going to be killed. He knew he was going to be persecuted and lied about, falsely accused, put down, rejected. Not one friend next to him while he had to face all of that. Any of you have any of those situations happening in your life right now? Feel pretty lonely? Feel pretty painful? He was going to face all that alone. And he did it because of the joy that was set before him, according to scriptures, which was to redeem us back so that we would be with him and have the opportunity with our free will to choose if we want it, to be with him for eternity. He bought us back to be able to have that possibility. So if you have a vision where there is no vision, the people perish. where there's lack of vision. Have a vision of what it's all about. If it's all about the TV games and about being comfortable, you're going to have trouble. If you make it about, okay, I would like those things, I desire it, and my flesh desires it desperately, but the most important things is godly character and building those things when things aren't good, and making mistakes as you do it, and asking for the blood of Christ and asking for forgiveness is going to happen. We're still in practice here. It's okay not to be perfect at it. Don't worry, just keep practicing. It's all right. Then you will get the lessons, you will get it, and you will reach the full potential that is yours to have, that you have been divinely put in to reach your full potential, to finish the work. Father finishes the work in those that want him to finish the work. And you can delay your work if you're not with that program and you're complaining and saying, like the Israelites did, oh, I wish we could go back to Egypt where the food was better than what we have now, and things were more secure than being out here in the desert and having to trust God for everything. We at least had some things there. Yeah. So if you want to go back to the old ways, you're sounding like an Israelite. It's what's happened. So now we want to break that off, and we want to become integrity and be like King David and have a testimony forever like King David of Father's goodness, even though for the rest of King David's life, he was fighting more giants and more armies and more wars. All right, so nothing like phone calls to stop recording right in the middle, but it doesn't matter. We're close to the end here. I just want to share with you that thank you for coming and being a part of this, and I hope we had a great chat together on this. We'll write down different chat messages there at midnight and be able to interact together. And I love that because I've been trying to think about how we can interact more, and some of you have wanted a little more fellowship or a little more interaction back and forth, and this might be an enhancement to just leaving comments. So I'm kind of excited about it, seeing who will show up, and invite your friends. Invite people, put it up on Facebook or whatever, or some people that you've been saying, oh, I'd love for you to get to know Tim and Katrina. Bring them in and see if they like what we're talking about, and if it really encourages them onto good works and helps give them strategies to kind of, get your spiritual life going in a direction instead of kind of stuck and wondering what to do and how to do it, to get some answers on that. And please, come to escapeallthesethings.com. We have a ton of free things there. And we continue to add more all the time. You can sign up for the newsletter that Tim does for Bible prophecy. And here as well on the YouTube channel, on Tim McHyde's channel, you can click the subscribe there. And that way, whenever I put new content up, you'll have a place on your channel to be able to know that I'm there and easy to find. Or there's a little bell next to it as well. And that little bell gives you notifications. So when I do other premieres or when I put up other content of On the Narrow Path here, the channel, you'll be advised with that and be able to know and be able to be a part of that and have enough time to prepare to be a part of it. So all those that will watch this even later than when I premiere this for the first time, that will also leave comments. I'm excited about that too. I'm glad you're here and a part of our little group of trying to be on the narrow path. So bless you all, Father. Help us all to face our giants. Help us all, Father, those that would like to agree with this prayer, Father, just bless them. Help them, Father, to get unstuck. It's really hard, Father. We've been struggling and sometimes we're tired and things have been overpowering us and those giants in our lives and wars in our life have either tired us out or made us feel really defeated, especially when it looks like they're winning for such a long period of time, Father. Fights and wars can be so hard. So I ask for refreshment. I ask that we're able to rise up in faith and know that you're going to help us make the final blow with your strength, and that it's not on our strength alone, Father, and that you have a special purpose and plan for us, and whatever the enemy does to us or the ones that we love, Father, that you are going to bring it for good. We don't know how, and it sure doesn't look like you can make good out of any of this, Father. I mean, many times we look at it and say, there's no way. There's no story you could ever tell me in the future or now that could make what we went through all right and work for good. And Father, I know in the end that you promise that when everything is revealed, we will all be sitting with our jaws open, just saying that you are righteous, that you did have a plan, and that it was perfect and we were wrong. So Father, before we just want to proclaim, instead of waiting till then, right now, that we're wrong. You are righteous. You are perfectly good, and that you have a perfect plan. And we'll proclaim that now instead of have to mourn it later. We're going to go through that process now and not put it off. I praise you, Father, and I thank you for this time, Father, that you have given us ideas of how to live this life with more peace and happiness, because without you, leaving it, especially during hard times with bad things happening, the people that seem nice, they can't hold on to it. They can't be nice when things are terrible very easily, most of them anyway. To be loving, even when everyone is against them and even to their enemies, Father, it takes you. It takes knowing that you will make everything right and that love wins even when hate comes against it, that even if hate kills those that love, it cannot kill love, and it can't kill us eternally, Father. It is temporary because death is swallowed up. You will swallow it up, and all suffering and pain you will swallow up. It cannot win. And I praise you that this is true, and it is true now and forever. In Yeshua's name, amen. Thanks for coming. All right, bye.